What's up, Flannelverse? It is time for Monday Night Football. We have two games on this Monday night. We've got the Buccaneers and Chargers, followed by the Raiders. Sorry, Buccaneers and Texans, followed by the Raiders and the Chargers. I do like that they're at different times, at least. I wish we would just have showdown slates, if I'm being honest. I just want single game slates on these island games personally, because now I have so many slates to go over. There's so much to cover with two games, and I just want larger showdown slates in general. But we'll make the most of it. I do like that they are sequential, so they're not happening at the same time. For the most part, you can sweat things pretty cleanly when they're not going at the same time. We're going to be going position by position here, starting with quarterbacks, then running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, and just defenses. There's no kickers on the two-gamer. And then at the end, I'll take some questions, go over lineups. I do plan on making my lineups on this stream. Part of the reason I started 2 hours before the slate even starts is I'm going to be going through position by position to start. Then I'm going to make my lineups for the main slate on DraftKings. Then I'm going to make my lineups for the main slate on FanDuel. Then I'm going to go over the showdown slate, the first showdown slate for DraftKings, make those lineups, and then probably spend a little time on the second showdown slate as well. So we're going to be covering a ton on this show, but we're going to start just general breakdown position by position, going over the two-game slate on DraftKings. So again, we're going to be starting at quarterback. Good to see Peppertoni is fimsed. What's up, JB? Let's get into it. We're going to start with the quarterbacks again. So I'm going to sort here by fantasy points instead of salary. So the top two in terms of projection are my two favorite quarterbacks on the slate. We've got Justin Herbert at 5,900, Geno Smith at 5,300, CJ Stroud 5,500, Baker Mayfield 6,500. Baker Mayfield, to me, is the toughest one to get to because he's the most expensive and has the worst. I mean, the projections of the bottom three are all within a fantasy point of each other, so it's not super meaningful. But Baker Mayfield does have the worst projection here of any quarterback on the slate at the highest price tag, and the ownership doesn't really reflect that. It's a really tough matchup for Baker Mayfield. So ultimately, he's going to be the one that I probably play the least on this slate. Baker Mayfield playing the Texans, who they gave up the 15th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last year, but I think generally accepted that it is a really strong defense. Going to be tough to score on the Texans. And also the stacking partners of Baker Mayfield are fairly expensive, so the stack just gets really expensive really quickly if you want to play Baker Mayfield. CJ Stroud, my second least favorite. He is, again, the second worst projection. Also a tough matchup with the Bucs. I think that game, it has a lower total. Obviously, there's upside there. Both of these quarterbacks are pretty good, so the game could surprise. There could be, higher scores there than we're anticipating, but not expected to be a particularly high scoring affair. But interestingly, Buccaneers defense allowed the fourth most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last year on the whole. I guess let's take a look at the schedule adjusted fantasy points. I want to look at just the last 5 weeks of last year to see if it's any different there. And it does look like the defenses got better throughout the year last year. So Las Vegas still allowed a lot of fantasy points. That's good to see if you're going to be playing that game. Houston kind of middle of the pack last year in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game to quarterbacks, but that's primarily to rushing quarterbacks, which Baker, he can run a little bit. So it's not nothing, but they were a tough matchup for quarterbacks through the air. Chargers also a little bit of a below average matchup there. And then the Bucs, a tough matchup here. Looks like their 8th worst matchup for quarterbacks over the final 5 games of last year. And that's kind of in line with our expectations this year of how good the defenses are going to be. I think the Bucs are going to be a strong defense. The Texans going to be a strong defense. So generally, I prefer to target the other game here. I'm going to be playing a lot more of Geno Smith and Justin Herbert. And getting into that one. So again, Geno Smith is just 5,300 projected for the second most fantasy points of the quarterbacks on this slate. And just love the stacking partners for Geno Smith. So that is part of it. You've got obviously Brock Bowers, the top tight end on the slate, assuming he plays, which I think the general expectation is that he is going to play. Jacoby Myers, the best point per dollar receiver on the slate. And then you've got a couple deep threats as well. So just easy to stack up the Raiders in a lot of different ways that all feel pretty good. So Geno Smith going to be a pretty big target of mine. Chargers defense allowed the 10th fewest scheduled adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last year on the whole, but again, middle of the pack in the final 5 games of the week. I think it's going to be a good spot there. And then Justin Herbert. Chargers were second in pass rate over expectation in week 1. Raiders defense allowed the 9th most scheduled adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last year. So good matchup for Justin Herbert. Chargers again, and we can look at I think I've got that pulled up, pass rate over expectation numbers. Yep. So 3 of these teams were pretty high on this pass rate over expectation list. The Texans being the one exception there. See if we can get it up. Chargers were, I believe, number 2. I think the Bucs were 4th in pass rate over expectation, and then the which other team is there? Bucs, Texans, Raiders were 6th, if I'm remembering correctly. Not sure why this isn't loading. There we go. Yeah. So in week 1, it was Chargers 2nd in the NFL in pass rate over expectation. Raiders 4th. Bucs 6th. So 3 of the 4 teams in the top 6 in terms of pass rate over expectation. And then you have to scroll all the way down to 25th to find the Texans. I'm not sure that that's going to hold. The Texans, I think, have a better passing game than running game and a weak offensive line. So I think they're probably going to be passing more, but worth noting that that was the trend in week 1. I don't really know how much more there is to say about the quarterbacks. If I were using an optimizer, I would definitely be requiring stacks. I'm going to be using the Sims. So with the Sims, I don't like to tell it what to do. The Sims are going to be doing play-by-play simulations followed by contest simulations. So they're going to know the rate at which I should be single stacking, double stacking, not stacking at all. They kind of take care of that for you. So you don't have to set as many rules. But if I were using an optimizer, I would probably just require single stacks. I think you can make arguments for requiring multi-stacks or single stacks. But ultimately, I think I would just require single stacks if I'm playing 150 lineups, because I want to, there are going to be scenarios where Geno Smith is the top quarterback on the slate and doesn't bring more than just like Brock Bowers along, because he just totally hyper focuses on Brock Bowers and they crush. So I would only require a single stack with an optimizer, or if I'm hand building several lineups, maybe I'd have some that don't double stack. But for the most part, I think we're going to want to be double stacking here. A lot of quarterbacks who are going to be doing most of their damage through the air. I think those are my only notes. I guess I should say Justin Herbert did run more than last year, which was kind of the expectation. That was something that Scott Barrett talked about a lot coming into the year, that he was expecting Justin Herbert to run a little bit more. The coaches talked about it in the offseason. The foot and ankle healed up, so he can just he's a little bit healthier, more able to run, and has the body type where he's just a capable runner. And we saw that in week 1. So I am bullish on Justin Herbert this year. Again, he's my second favorite quarterback on the slate. I don't think I have anything more to say about the quarterbacks. It's you're stacking up. If I were playing more than one lineup, I would probably be playing more than one quarterback in those lineups. But yeah, my ranking of them, Geno Smith would be number 1, Justin Herbert number 2, and then I think it's probably Baker Mayfield maybe Baker Mayfield followed by CJ Stroud. Those two are kind of interchangeable in my mind. All right, I think that's it for quarterbacks. We're gonna move right on through this. Yeah, as Emwald says, it does feel like I just got off the stream with Adam. I streamed with Adam for a long time, then finished my article for Fantasy Points, finished some work for Roto-Grinders, and I'm right back here. So just in the weeds here with this slate, but happy to be doing it. Excited for another night of football. We're gonna keep it rolling to the running backs, and I'm just gonna be going fairly quickly through these positions. Again, a lot of people probably already watched the stream from earlier with Adam, so a lot of the same information there. And then once I get through the position by position, I'll actually start making my lineups in Run the Sims. You can see the types of lineups that it's giving me, which I haven't done yet today, so I'm also excited to see what those lineups are going to look like. So at running back, it's kind of a condensed running back slate, in my opinion. Sometimes on these, even on 2-game slates, I'll find 7 or 8 running backs that I think are viable to even good plays. We don't have a ton of those on this slate. We have kind of not even the big 4, really kind of the big 3 in Ashton Genty, Bucky Irving, and Omar Hampton. Nick Chubb, I do not include in that list. Maybe some people would include Nick Chubb because he is at least nominally the 4th starter here. But to me, it's kind of a big three and then three more that you can kind of consider playing. Nick Chubb, I would say, is the most likely to hit a big game here of the three. But I think it's Chubb, Najee Harris, Rashad White, and then I don't know that I'm super excited about getting to any of the other running backs here for the main slate. I think they're all kind of a little bit thin on the two gamer. Kind of like need an injury or something really wonky to happen. So to me, it is Genty is my favorite here. And we can look at the stats here with Genty. I'll just read some off. So Genty had 19 carries and 2 targets. Actually, let me pull up the data suite here. So Genty projected for, well, I can go here. Let me pull up Run the Sims. This is the Monday 2-gamer. I guess maybe I'll start with the first game. So I'll start with Tampa. We've got Bucky Irving is the pretty clear starter there. And I can pull up the bell cow report from last week. The usage was as many had hoped. Like, he just has clearly taken on the bell cow role for the Bucs. Last week played 77% of the snaps, had 14 carries, 4 targets on 57% route participation. So, if we may have had some concern coming into the year that it's possible Rashad White retains some of that passing game work because he's really good in the passing game. So there was a concern that maybe they would split it in a way where Rashad White still retains a lot of that work. That was not the case at all in week 1. Just 1 target for Rashad White on 19% route participation. It was the Bucky show. The concern with Bucky Irving is the matchup with the Texans. It's not a great one. Texans allowed just 2.9 yards per carry in week 1. That is the 4th fewest yards per carry in the NFL this season. And that's not a big surprise. The Texans defense is expected to be good. So it's kind of a situation of elite workload, really tough matchup, high price tag, high ownership. There are some pros and some cons to Bucky Irving. Ultimately, I think I'm probably going to be very slightly underweight on Bucky Irving. He's coming in again at 76% ownership. And that kind of makes sense because, again, there's pretty loose pricing on this slate. So you can sort of get to whoever you want to. And we'll see that I can pull up Rotograd. As you can see the projections here, he has the second best projection of any running back on the slate. Hang on, let me reset these numbers. Projected just barely behind Ashton Genty, and those two a full fantasy point better than Omar and Hampton, much better than Nick Chubb. And then receivers, we'll get to as well. But projects really well, easy to get to him. Makes sense that he's projected for a lot of ownership. Little bit of a difference here, 62% at RG. Run the Sims has him at 76%. I probably want to play closer to that number that RG has him at, I think. But again, there's limited running backs that we want to play here. So maybe I do get closer to that 76%. I think he's a fine play. He's not my favorite running back play on the slate. I do prefer Genty at the very least, and maybe Hampton. If I can get to Bucky, I'd happy to get there. But I think at his price tag, I have a slight preference for Omar and Hampton as well. But he's certainly one of the best running back plays on the slate. Rashad White projected for 1% ownership at 4,700. I think he's fine. Again, just pulled up the bell cow report. Rashad White, just 2 carries last week, 1 target on 19% route participation. Not much of a role, but he has a little bit of a standalone role. And then he does have obviously awesome contingent upside if anything were to happen to Bucky. I don't even know that in the event of a blowout, you have some running backs that also have that contingent upside. I don't really think Rashad White would come in the case of a blowout. That'd probably be more Sean Tucker. So really it's just contingent upside in the case of an injury to Bucky Irving, or maybe game script. Like, he is still really good in the passing game. Maybe if Bucky Irving, screws up a blocking assignment or something, they would bring in Rashad White for a little bit more work. But generally, I think it's kind of going to be the Bucky show. We'll have a side share of Rashad White, but not going to have a huge workload there. I think he's a fine play at 1%. I probably want a couple percent of Rashad White across my lineups, but again, not a huge priority for me. On the other side, we have the Texans. Now, Nick Chubb projected for 24% ownership here at 5,000. RG has him projected for 39% ownership. So kind of a big difference in the ownership projection for Nick Chubb. Can pull up the bell cow report again. Texans were a big split last week. And D'Amico Ryans talked about that. He was like, I wanted to get all four of these guys work last week. We've got a deep running back room. Talked about it as though that was intentional, that he really wanted to use all four, but then came out after the game. And actually, let me pull up on my side. I'm going to pull up the Coach Speak Index Discord. Highly recommend it to anybody who is looking for Coach Speak. It's really well organized, really great resource. But I want to make sure I don't get the quote wrong here. D'Amico Ryan said, I think Nick Chubb ran the ball really well last week. We tried to mix it up with the other backs. We're going to try to lean in with Chubb a little bit more. I think he deserves it. He's shown that he continued to get better as the game went on. You saw him running stronger, finishing plays in a physical manner. So we got to get him going a little bit more. I think he can really help us. And then the offensive coordinator doubled down on that, said that he gets stronger as the game goes on. So it sounds like they really want to build some momentum with Nick Chubb, get him going, get the usage up for Nick Chubb. We can look at the stats, I guess, from last week. He was actually fine. 13 carries for, let's see, 13 carries for 60 yards, which is not bad. 4.6 yards per carry. Honestly, pretty good behind a really bad offensive line. Houston expected to be one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and Chubb had some success behind the offensive line. I don't think it is, again, I think it's kind of a tough matchup with the Bucs in week 1. Again, I'll pull up my article here. Bucs defense allowed just 2.5 yards per carry, which is the third fewest in the NFL. They're just, whenever Vita Vea is healthy, they're just awesome at stopping the run. They're like, there's huge splits when he's in versus when he's out. Vita Vea is healthy for this game, so it's going to be a pretty tough run defense for Nick Chubb. Maybe he's getting back to, who he used to be a couple of years ago. Maybe he's going to surprise us and be one of those runners who's just like a Derrick Henry, who's just elite at running the football and ends up being more efficient than anybody is expecting. I don't think that that's likely, and I think in this matchup he's a little bit of a tough play. But at low 20s ownership, I think he's totally fine. If he does get closer to 40. That's going to be a pretty big fade for me. I think I prefer the other running backs on the slate. I don't know that I'm going to go out of my way to get to any of Agumbawale, Pierce, or Woody Marks. If not for the coach quotes saying they want to get Nick Chubb more involved, maybe I would think about playing like a Pierce at 4,200. I thought he was going to be getting more of the split, but just based on the usage last week and then the coach quotes, I don't really think anybody else is going to have a huge workload here. Maybe I guess Agumbawale. Agumbawale would probably be the second running back that I would consider working in, just because of the price tag and the passing game role. He's min priced. He is projected for 4% ownership, so getting a little bit of ownership, but based on last week, it does seem like he kind of has that secondary role behind Chubb. If they do cut out other running backs, I think they're more likely to cut out Pierce and Marks, who I think are kind of the backups to Chubb and Agumbawale. So if they consolidate the usage a little bit, I think it would be Agumbawale playing those passing down roles. That there's value to that in a full PPR site. Again, we have pretty soft pricing, so you might not need the savings on an Agumbawale, but if you can, rack up a handful of catches, score a touchdown, could pay off the price tag and be worth having in your lineup anyway. And maybe leave some salary on the table. So viable in a 150 set, would not be getting to any of the non-Chubb running backs if I were playing 20 lineups. And then in the other game, Chargers at Raiders, Omarion Hampton is 5,800, so much cheaper than Bucky Irving and Ashton Genty. He's projected for 57% ownership. And then you have Najee Harris is 4,800, projected for just 3% ownership here. See if it's similar. RG has it, Najee Harris at 8%, Omarion Hampton at 60%. Interesting split here let me pull it up. For the Chargers. So Hampton last week, 81% of the snaps. He had 15 carries and 2 targets on 54% route participation. Najee Harris played 11 snaps. He had just 1 carry and 1 target on 12% route participation. So really elite usage for Omari and Hampton last week. Najee Harris, kind of a non-factor last week. Let me pull up my notes here. Raiders defense did allow just 3.3 yards per carry last week, which is the 6th fewest in the NFL. So not shaping up to be, based on that 1 week sample, did not look like it's a great matchup for the running backs here. But I still, at 5,800, I have a lot of interest in Omari and Hampton for that workload. Wouldn't be surprised to see them, to see him continue to get a little bit more work here. But then Najee Harris is the one that is pretty interesting to me. And again, that's based on some of the coach speak surrounding Najee Harris. So I'll just read off what Jim Harbaugh said this week, if I can find it. He says so much. He talks a lot. So we've got a lot of quotes to sift through here. Let's see. But he said the usage might change. He said he wanted to play Najee Harris 12 to 15, give him 12 to 15 snaps. They got him right to that number, and that could change. Yeah, we planned, here's what he said on the 8th. We planned 12 to 15 plays for Najee Harris against the Chiefs, hit it right at 12. This week could be different, which a lot of different ways to interpret that. Could be more, could be less. But generally, I would say probably means more for Najee Harris after he was, limited in his practicing throughout the summer. I think it's more likely to go up than down for Najee Harris. Not entirely sure. It's a weird situation because Omari and Hampton probably the more talented back. But Harbaugh has also talked about how Najee Harris is a great route runner. He said he runs routes like a receiver. So he might start using Najee Harris more in that passing game role, which obviously pretty valuable. He's only 4,800. If they start using him as the passing game receiver, that's going to be really helpful for Najee Harris as a fantasy asset. And at 3% to 8% projected ownership, I actually really like Najee Harris. I think that's a spot where I might cut into my Chubb exposure with a little bit more than the field of Najee exposure, because I think he could have that passing game involvement, which is just super valuable in full PPR. Ted says they're only 1K apart, and look at the difference in their projections. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, Omari and Hampton is the one that I'm going to be playing a lot more of. He's 8 points projection better than Najee Harris. So when I'm talking about Najee Harris, so again, I think that there are 3 studs on this slate. I think it's Omari and Hampton, Ashton Genty, and Bucky Irving. I'm going to be playing way more of those 3 than any other running back. I want to be clear about that. But so is the field. So when I'm talking about liking Najee Harris, I mean relative to the amount that the field is getting to him. So if the field is getting to 57% Omari and Hampton, I might be right there, in the 55 to 65% range with Omari and Hampton. Love him, think he's a great play. Najee Harris is one that he's projected for 3 to 8% ownership, and I like his range of outcomes. I like the upside there relative to the ownership he's getting. So when I say I like Najee Harris, I don't mean I like him better than Omari and Hampton. I mean I like him better than the amount that the field is going to play him. And I think I'm probably going to play, 10 to 15% Najee Harris. I'm not going to be going, maybe a little bit higher, like 18%. I don't know, kind of in that range. We'll see what the Sims give me. I'll make adjustments. I don't have like an exact set number. I'm just saying I'm certainly going to want more than 3% Najee Harris. If it is 8%, honestly, I don't know that I want to get that much higher than that number, but I think he's a pretty strong bet if he does come in at low ownership. And somebody asked, can you play them together? Yeah, I think you certainly can on a 2-game slate. No issue playing 2 running backs from the same team. You got to find ways to get different and maybe avoid some dupes. And that's a way you can often do that is just playing 2 running backs from the same team. Waylon asks, the opto that I'm using generates 500 lineups for me. Right now, the top 80 projected points lineups are Herbert iterations. What do you usually do in situations like this to get other quarterbacks? I don't know which optimizer you're using, but usually I will, if I'm using an opto, I'll go in and make 500 lineups, set an exposure cap of 25% on each, or depending on the slate. Sometimes I want 40% of one quarterback. You can usually set exposure caps on most optimizers. and then you can see what the different lineups look like. So I'll require, if I'm using Opto, I'll require stacks. I'll set a cap on the quarterbacks at 25%, 30%, and run it, and then just see the lineups that come out with those exposure caps. So generally, I would recommend, you want to set rules with your optimizer. If you don't set rules with an optimizer, you're just going to get the highest projected lineups, and they're not going to be the best lineups. You're going to have lineups that are going to be duped a lot. They're not going to be diversified at all. You need to work with your optimizer. It's just a tool to give you lineups that you want. You don't just want to use the top optimized lineup. So hopefully that's helpful in some way. But yeah, I would set an exposure cap on your quarterbacks at the levels that you like. Neil, did you and Adam talk about dupes in the earlier show? Do you have any thoughts on how to think about it? Yeah, I mean, avoiding dupes is important on a 2-game slate, much like a showdown slate. It's also easier on a two-game slate than a showdown slate because you just have more players to choose from, more combos. But certainly there are things you can do. You can still leave salary on the table, find unique players, or just different builds. So majorly stacking one game or one team. Even we've seen on these 2-game slates, I can remember a slate where a team had 6 players from the same team won a Millie Maker. And that was just something that people don't often do on these slates. So there's just a lot of different ways that you can construct your lineups to get a little bit different. Overstacking, maybe understacking and playing some unique players, quarterback versus defense, lots of different ways you can do it. And we'll see it. When I run the sims, we'll be able to look at what some of the lineups look like. How do you feel about the week 1 Millie not having stacks or the usual stuff DFS people online talk about? I mean, it's always possible. Like the winning lineup is not going to be the highest scoring lineup. It's not going to be the actual optimal, what's the word I'm looking for? The highest scoring lineup possible. It's going to be lower than that, and I don't think it's a good idea. Like you shouldn't be chasing that because somebody won with an unstacked lineup. I think lineups win all the time that are not plus EV. I think that would be, you put that one into a simulator, it's going to be a negative EV lineup in most cases if you don't have any kind of correlation there. And you don't want to be playing negative EV lineups because yeah, one person won that, but how many thousands of lineups were in that contest that had no stacks? And most of them lost their money. Just like this one happens to win, but you get thousands of those in the Millie Maker every single week, and most of them are going to be losers. And most of the lineups that end up winning a higher proportion than the amount they're played are the stacked lineups. So generally, correlated lineups are just more likely to win relative to the amount that they are played, whereas uncorrelated lineups are going to win less often than they should relative to the amount that they're played. So yeah, they're going to win some of the time, but I would not try to chase what happened in that lineup. I didn't actually take a look at that lineup, but that's generally just my thought on non-correlated lineups winning. Yeah, sure, they're going to win some of the time if you just hit the nuts in terms of the projection, but you want to put yourself in places where you're more likely to get the wins. Okay, Ogumba Wallet, I like it. If he scores a touchdown, very live to be the sleeper you need. All right. Moving on. Sorry, getting sidetracked here. So yeah, Najee at low ownership. I think I like him better than the ownership, not by a crazy high amount, but we have limited good secondary running backs to play, and I think he is my favorite of the non-starters, if you exclude the top player from each team. Then you have Ashton Genty. He's 7,000, so he's the second most expensive running back on the slate. He is projected for 70% ownership, and I think he's a great play. He also had an awesome workload last week, and I don't think there's any threat to his workload with Zamir White and Dylan Lobby behind him. In his first NFL game, 19 carries for Ashton Genty, 2 targets on 48.7% route participation. Obviously, you'd like to see the targets come up. That's very helpful to get those targets up for his floor and ceiling combo. But I think it's a great spot for Genty facing a Chargers defense that allowed 5.8 yards per carry in week 1. That's the 3rd most in the NFL. Obviously, don't read too much into a 1-week sample size yards per carry. That's not extremely meaningful because it's all going to be dependent on who you played and stuff. But it's at least worth noting that they did give up yards on the ground last week. And I think Genty is just a talented running back, should have some success here. So I like Genti quite a bit. I think he might be. I mean, we can take a look at the projections. So based on projections and ownership, I mean, they're basically projected the exact same. Bucky and Genti are sort of in a league of their own. I kind of include Omar and Hampton as the top three there. I don't have a really strong preference between Genti and Bucky. I think I'd like to be, if this is where the field ends up, I'll probably be over the field on both of them, honestly. If it gets higher into like the 75, 80%, I could end up a little bit light there. But it's a soft price in slate, really easy to get to these guys, and you can see how well they project. I'm probably going to have a lot of Genti, a lot of Bucky Irving, a lot of Omarion Hampton, less than the field, most likely of Nick Chubb, especially if he comes in this high. And then I'll be above the field on Najee Harris, maybe a few shares of Rachaad White, a few shares of Dare Gumbawale, and that might be it for me. I don't think I need to get to any Dameon Pierce, Woody Mark, Sean Tucker on the 2-gamer. Anything else about running backs? I think that's it. Somebody asked about playing 2 running backs from the same team. I think it's viable. I think it's a good way to get different. Maybe the team is just able to run all over the other team, and they just end up running it 35 times, and 2 running backs is what you need for that team. Or, give 35 touches to running backs, and those are the 2 running backs that you need. So yeah, I like the idea of playing 2 running backs from the same team just fine. All right, moving on to wide receivers, and I'm going to get back to run the Sims here. So I think I'm going to go team by team here with the receivers. Also make sure, did I move that down? Didn't move it down. Let me do that. All right. Appreciate the reminder from Dan. Yeah, please do like the video. It's really helpful for me as I'm trying to grow the channel if you do like the video. Of course, if you're not already subscribed, I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. Would love to get to 5,000 this week. I'm getting pretty close to it. So if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be very much appreciated. And just liking the video. It's helpful. If you want to get notifications when I go live, which is most days of the week, I'm going to be posting something. You can hit the little notification bell as well. In a 47K field, 20 max contest, what number of dupes would you be shooting for per lineup under 5? I don't know that I have an exact number in line, and that's part of, I guess, what we'll see when I run the Sims, what it gives me, because you'll find on Showdown slates, the top EV lineup sometimes will be duped 100 times because it's just so likely to hit that ends up being a good lineup, even though it's going to be duped many, many times. Whereas you're going to find other lineups that are high EV because they're duped just once. And that's part of the reason that they're high EV, because when they do work out, even if it's not as often, when they do hit, they hit for so much money. So I honestly, I don't have an exact number in line on a 2-game slate. Like, I would love to be duped. I would love for most of my lineups to be, I think under 5 is kind of a good number there. That would be like for the majority of my lineups, I'd love for them to be maybe under 10 is a good metric, just because you're dealing with such a limited player pool. And I think you'd still win a lot of money if it's duped 8 times. So I guess under 10 is probably a good metric for a 47K field. I think if you're making lineups that project well and are duped 10 times or less, I think that's generally like a pretty good rule, but it's really gonna change slate to slate. And they're gonna have different EVs slate to slate. And that's part of the beauty of being able to use the Sims here, is I will get an idea of, on this slate, how often do I want them to be duped. All right. Oh, that's interesting. We don't have a dupes column on this slate, just the Showdown. So it's just for the Showdown. I didn't realize that they don't have it for this slate, but that is a good note. So I might want to take a look at, like, all right, are these lineups using the full salary cap? Do I need to be doing something to mitigate dupes on this 2-gamer? That's a good note. Okay, wide receivers, starting with the Bucs. So we've got Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka stand out as the clear top 2 receivers on the Bucs, and then Sterling Shepard, I think, is also pretty in play here at 3,100. Mike Evans, 6,800, projected for 41% ownership. Emeka Egbuka, 5,800, projected for 36% ownership, and then Sterling Shepard, 3,100, projected for 11% ownership. If I pull up let me refresh this. See what the route participation looked like last week. So last week it was Emeka Egbuka ran 89.2% of the routes, had 6 targets in that game, so just 18.8% target share, scored 2 touchdowns on his routes. So obviously a great first game for a rookie wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka. Mike Evans, 83.8% route participation, saw 8 targets. And then Sterling Shepard was the clear third receiver here, ran 70.3% of the routes, saw 6 targets in that game as well. So also very, very viable here. This is let me look at in terms of yards per reception. Texans defense did allow 11.7 in week 1, which is the 9th most in the NFL. So in week 1, they actually allowed a fair number of yards per reception, but generally this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bucs. Obviously, with just 2 games, these are going to be some of the highest projected players here. Mike Evans projecting for 17 fantasy points, Emeka Egbuka 13.6. They're going to get a fair amount of ownership. Let's see what RG has Evans projected for 45%, Egbuka at 35. So actually pretty similar in terms of the projected ownership here. I think it's probably right. There's a part of me that thinks Egbuka could get steamed, but I'm not as confident in this one as I was in Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt last week. Like this is it's kind of a lot, and he's also expensive, and we have a lot of pretty good mid-priced options. So Adam and I talked about this on the earlier show, and he was making the point that there's just so many. Oh, and Dameon Pierce, healthy inactive. We just got some inactives here. That's pretty interesting. Dameon Pierce inactive certainly makes you like Ogunbowale a little bit better. I mean, it's not that huge of a thing because he was kind of the backup to Nick Chubb. So maybe it makes you think Nick Chubb gets a little bit more workload. But wait. Drew says, Neil, worth a review on running back, in my opinion. I'm big on Dare. Pass protection looked terrible. He's a much better option than Chubb. Pearson active. Yeah. So with Pearson active, I agree. I think that it does make Dare Ogunbowale look a little bit better. I will go back real quick just to show you what so last week, sorry, not the Chargers, Texans. So what does this open up? Pierce played 7 snaps last week, had 3 rushing attempts, 1 target on 8.8% route participation. So if things hold, that it doesn't open up a ton there. And I would kind of think that just goes to Chubb because, again, they're talking about leaning on Chubb a little bit more. But I also agree on Ogunbowale. I think that those numbers just go directly to Chubb after they talked about using Chubb a little bit more. But it takes away one more possible obstacle to Ogunbowale if they wanted to continue to do some sort of a 4-headed monster. Like we don't have to worry about the 4-headed monster at all anymore. So it is, a slight benefit, I think, to Woody Marks and Dare Ogunbowale. And I already liked Ogunbowale just fine as a dart throw at very little ownership. Again, we have Ogunbowale at going to the wrong place again. 4% ownership. I think he's a fine to strong play there. So I anticipate that I'll be a little bit above weight to Ogunbowale. That takes away what was Pierce projected for 2.5 fantasy points. I'd say more of that goes to Chubb. I think it's more, in my mind at least, it's more like Pierce is the backup to Chubb. Marks is the backup to Ogunbowale. And so I think that this is kind of in line with we want to give Nick Chubb more of the work, lean into Chubb more. So to me, this doesn't have a huge impact on Ogunbowale. But I already like Ogunbowale. I think he is a fairly strong play here. Drew, let me know if you have any other thoughts there. All right. No, honestly, I just think it's Chubb. I don't think it really benefits anybody else all that much. All right. So back to the Buccaneers. Receivers. Yeah, Evans at 41% ownership, I think is a pretty strong play. He'll see some Derek Stingley. We're not expecting any kind of shadow matchup here. So you can see the way Fantasy Point says they've got Kamari Lassiter on Egbuka, Derek Stingley on Mike Evans, Jalen Petrie on Sterling Shepard. I'm not super concerned about any of these matchups. I think they're a good defense overall. I don't think it's a great matchup for the Bucs in general, but none of these are like individual matchups that are scaring me off any of the receivers. I'm not expecting shadow coverage. You can see they highlight like this where there is shadow expectations. We're not expecting any kind of shadow coverage from the Houston cornerbacks. And they're not getting like crazy high ownership. So I'm not like trying to find reasons to fade Evans or Ibuka. I think they're both just pretty strong plays at ownership. And Sterling Shepard, one of the better low owned plays on the slate. The ownership has come up 11%, a little bit higher. I liked him better in single digit ownership. I don't know that I'm going to be, I doubt I come in over 11%. I think it's a fine number. There are other dart throws I like a little bit better, but 6 targets on 70% route participation, like that's a real role for Sterling Shepard. And he's only 3,100. So he's a little bit too cheap for his role on the team. I think the ownership is fair. If I get a little bit higher than 11%, I'm totally happy with that for Sterling Shepard. I'm not sure you need it, is the reason I'm not sure that I get above 11%, because we have a lot of pretty inexpensive players. But we got Tez Johnson out also. We can look at that. Tez Johnson last week ran 4 routes, 10.8% route participation. Does that make Ryan Miller more interesting as a dart? I don't know if it's if Shepard gets those routes, or what kind of routes is he running? 50% from the slot, 50% out wide for Tez Johnson. Same exact thing for Ryan Miller. Maybe those routes just go straight to Ryan Miller and he doubles up. Maybe they go to Sterling Shepard. I don't really know how to what's going to happen there with the Tez Johnson 4 routes. Not extremely meaningful, but it's a little bit of a boost to the other receivers here. Ryan Miller, Sterling Shepard. I don't know if I'm going to play any Ryan Miller. He's not a priority for me. It's really the big 3: Egbuka, Evans, Shepard. Maybe Miller makes it into my player pool now with Tez Johnson inactive, but I don't think he's going to be somebody that I'm really focusing on. I think that does it for the Bucs receivers. On the Texan side, kind of interesting. So you've got Nico Collins, the clear alpha for the Texans. He's 7,300, projected for a nice 69% ownership. Last week, just 5 targets for Nico Collins, but 85.3% route participation. I think we know what we're getting with Nico Collins, right? It's not a great matchup with the Bucs, but always going to be a fairly strong play. What was the target share for the Texans? I'll show you. Yeah, and I will get into the showdown slate also after I'm done with the 2-gamer, by the way. So Nico Collins, 5 targets last week, target share just 18.5%, but that's obviously not going to hold. Like he's the clear best receiver on the Texans. The target share is going to come up for Nico Collins. We can look at matchups here if you're interested. Let's see. Jameel Dean, Zion McCollum, Jacob Parrish. No shadow coverages here. Generally a fairly strong defense for the Bucs, but I think they're more going to be more of a pass funnel. I think better run defense with Vita Vea there, so could work out. Texans have a pretty bad offensive line. I don't know. I'm not like super hopeful for the Texans offense, but I think Nico Collins, one of the better spend up options on the slate, pretty clearly projects for 18.4 fantasy points here. He is the second highest projection of the receivers. If you can get to Nico Collins, I don't really know what to tell you. He's a strong play. It's going to be targeted quite a bit. He's a really talented receiver. CJ Stroud, I still think, is a pretty good quarterback. Nico Collins, strong play. Last week was Xavier Hutchinson at 64.7% route participation. Interestingly, I've seen some places have Jaden Higgins with an actual higher projection, which it's a little bit of a, it's Jaden Higgins' second game. And also Jalen Knoll could play more. He is the slot receiver who, with Christian Kirk out, I think kind of the expectation was that Knoll would step in and run more, play a little bit more, would maybe benefit more from Christian Kirk. Nico Collins type, the exact same size, like 6'4", runs on the outside primarily. So he would benefit potentially more with Nico Collins out. But so far, neither of them super used in week 1. 41% route participation for Jalen Knoll, 38% for Jaden Higgins. And then as far as ownership goes, we've got Hutchinson at 8%, Justin Watson at 3.4%. Didn't even look at Watson there. Let me pull him up. 38% rep participation last week for Justin Watson. We do have to consider with Cade Stover out, maybe they use the receivers a little bit more. Don't do any 2 tight end sets. They do have the rep participation over 100% for the tight ends here, so they were doing at least some 2 tight end sets. Maybe they get rid of those, or maybe it's just Harrison Bryant taking over the Cade Stover role. But generally, it's possible we see a little bit of a benefit to the receivers with Cade Stover out, and maybe that's where Jaden Higgins could benefit a little bit. But I think Xavier Hutchinson, probably the second receiver I'm most likely to get to on the Texans, followed by Jaden Higgins. I mean, he was I want to say second round pick, really, expected to have a good NFL career, somebody that we expect to work in at some point this year. So he would probably be my third favorite of the Texans, followed by Jalen Noel. I'm not super excited about Justin Watson, but that might just be an old guy bias, or a boring guy who's been around too long bias. Watson, interestingly, 76% from the slot. So I guess he was cutting into Jalen Noel last week. Really hard to break down the Texans receivers, honestly, with the 2 rookies. Like, we just don't know how quickly they're going to start incorporating Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. I think they're fine dart throws, again, at relatively low ownership, 3-4%, 7% to Higgins. But yeah, my preference would be Collins 1, Hutchinson 2, followed by, I think, probably Higgins, then Noel on the Texans. I'm not going to, none of them a huge priority outside of Nico Collins for me. What's up, Sean? Good to see you. Slight bump for Schultz. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable with Cade Stover out. I think it's possible Harrison Bryant just takes the Stover stuff. We don't know that for sure, though. Cade Stover, I think, is a player that they did like. Well, we'll get to the tight ends. Yeah, this is my read on it also. Swish Sanders says Pearson active is major Chubb bump. I mean, I think it's just it lines up, it matches up with what the coaches were saying about wanting to get Chubb more work. I think that Pierce was just kind of the Chubb backup. So I do think that is the biggest impact there. All right. I do like him slightly more now that Pearson active, and honestly, I think I liked him anyway. So I want to be clear. Like, I think Ogunbowale is somebody that if I play 20 lineups, I would want him in 1 to 2 of my lineups. I don't think I would want him in more than that. I think he's a fine play. I also think we have some really strong running backs on this slate, but we have, expensive running backs. We don't need too many running backs to fail for somebody like Ogunbowale to work out. So yeah, I think that he's a strong play. Maybe you might want 10% of Ogunbowale. I think that is a reasonable amount to play. Okay. Second game, receivers. Chargers are fun. These receivers, really fun in week 1. Again, this was second in terms of pass rate over expectation last week for the Chargers. Ladd McConkey seemed like he had a really down game. He still was targeted quite a bit. Let's see. 9 targets for Ladd McConkey last week on 92.7% route participation. Projected for 64% ownership. RG has him at 50% ownership. I think he should be higher than 50% owned. We don't have that many players that just project really well. Ladd is easy to get in your lineups. I like the game environment of the second game better. I don't think that that's a hot take. I think that's going to be a pretty common take, which it might lead to the game being more owned than we want it to be. If everybody kind of feels the same way, like it looks like the game that's more likely to blow out, to have fireworks here. But yeah, I think Ladd, really strong play at 6,900, projects one of the better projected flex options on the slate. I'll have a lot of Ladd, not really a ton more to say about it. In terms of the matchup, Raiders defense, has allowed just 9.6 yards per reception, which is the 7th lowest in the NFL. So they might be surprising us a little bit as far as their defense. So far, they have been surprisingly effective in their one single game. Now I'm remembering who do they play in week 1. I'm actually gonna look that up because this is not schedule adjusted. That's just straight up yards allowed. They played the Patriots, and the Patriots just really struggled. The Patriots were pretty good this week, so that's kind of an unknown. Like, how good are the Patriots? We just don't really know if that was the defense playing well. The Patriots might just be kind of inconsistent at this point. We'll find out. Yeah, that is true. People could be spooked by QJ and Keenan seeming to take on more of the role, but I don't think they should be. I think Ladd was targeted 9 times last week. I think he's still a really strong play here. I would like to have more than 50% of Ladd McConkey in my lineups. Keenan Allen, this ownership seems really low to me, 16%. What does RG have it at? 34%. I think they had it higher earlier. Maybe I'm actually going to refresh. Let's see if anything has changed here. I feel like when Adam and I did the show earlier, it was looking like a higher number than that. They don't do the ownership projections themselves here. Okay, now we have Keenan Allen at 32%. So I don't know. Was I in the wrong spot there? I don't know. But yeah, I think 32%, totally fair for Keenan Allen. 64% Ladd McConkey seems about right. Quentin Johnson now at 13%. That would shock me if Quentin Johnson comes in at 13%. At 13%, I would absolutely love Quentin Johnson. I think that he is a pretty strong play here. I was talking about it with Matt Butler in DMs because Adam and I had talked about it earlier. How Quentin Johnson, I read somewhere, I think it might have been Matt Harmon tweeted about it, how they used him a little bit different in week 1, where they were manufacturing touches to Quentin Johnson and letting him do more after the catch. And then I looked at it and it was like, but his ADOT was actually higher in week 1 than it was last year. So you can see here, Quentin Johnson, 13.9 ADOT in week 1. It was like 11 something last year. So that kind of like, all right, well, that doesn't add up to what I had read before. I'm sure there's nuance there that I'm not fully grasping here. So I was DMing with Matt Butler about it. He pointed out that QJ, and you can look it up on Next Gen Stats, but 40 of his 79 yards were after the catch. He was running more post routes. He also pointed out that he's 25% from the slot in week 1, where he had 0.033 targets per route run, compared to 11% from the slot last year, 0.02 targets per route run. So a little bit higher slot rate for Quentin Johnson. Yeah, 25% slot in week 1. So they changed the way they used him a little bit in week 1. Very promising. Obviously, he scored the 2 touchdowns. Maybe if they don't throw him so far down the field, he won't have as many drops this year. Maybe they did just kind of figure out how to use QJ a little bit better. If he came in at 13%, I would be kind of shocked. I think people are pretty excited about QJ right now. This is one, if he came in, I think earlier we had it like 24%, and I thought that seemed a little bit low. 24%, at 13%, I would be absolutely shocked. Run Pure loves QJ. Okay, that's I don't think he's going to be low owned, because I think everybody is going to be talking about, hey, QJ looks awesome. He's, he was a first round pick who took a little while to develop, and then we saw him break out in week 1. So I think a lot of people are expecting that breakout to continue. A lot of people who just play season-long fantasy and are going to be, playing a little bit of DFS are going to want to play some QJ. So I think the ownership comes in 20 something at least. This number would be pretty surprising to me. But as Adam and I talked earlier, we do have a lot of pretty cheap, strong options here. So it's possible he doesn't come in quite as high as I'm expecting. Again, this number would shock me. What does RG have him at? They have him at 24%. That would shock me less. I think that would be about my expectation. And then Keenan Allen. So we have Keenan Allen at 32% ownership again. Looking at last week, so we had Keenan Allen 78% rep participation, saw 9 targets. QJ 88% rep participation, saw 7 targets. Ladd McConkey 93, 9 targets. I think those are the 3 receivers that I'm playing here. I don't think I'm going to play any Keandre Lambert-Smith. I mean, he is 29. His one target was 29 yards down the field. I guess he's a plausible tournament flyer. You could throw him in there. Don't think you need to play Trey Harris here on the 2-gamer, maybe more of a showdown play. Lambert-Smith, excuse me. I think you can consider him on the 2-gamer just as a tournament dart throw. Hope that he has an 80-yard touchdown at low ownership and a low price tag. On the Raiders, so again, I'm going to be playing a lot of Geno Smith. I'll be playing a lot of the Raiders. I think one of the bigger decision points on the slate is what are you doing with Jacoby Myers? Because at 4,900, he just projects too well. He's just a really, really strong point per dollar projection at 4,900, and he's going to be really highly owned as a result of it. He's also not the type of like super boom bust play where it's really likely to fail a lot of the time. He's going to be targeted quite a bit. I think if he comes in under 60% owned, I'm going to be above the field on Jacoby Myers. I think he's just too good of a play to not play, at least like 60% at that price tag. Last week, Jacoby Myers, 92.3% route participation, saw 10 targets. There are a lot of mouths to feed there, so it's possible for him to not be good, to not put up a score that you really want, but the floor is, I think, pretty high on Jacoby Myers. All right, yeah. So everywhere has QJ under 25%. That surprises me just a little bit, but I think that his ownership might surprise a little bit. I think it's going to be at least 20%. I guess I'd be pretty surprised if it comes in lower than 20%, and I would certainly want a lot of it if it comes in under 20%. So Jacoby Myers, again, one of the bigger decision points on the slate. I think I'm just buying it. I'm going to have 60+% of Jacoby Myers most likely. The other receivers here, the ones that I'm really interested in are Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton, who to me are just pretty similar to each other. Trey Tucker, of course, 87.2% route participation last week to Thornton's 53.8. So he, to me, looks like the better play just in a vacuum, a little bit more likely to hit. Dante Thornton did have 4 targets to Trey Tucker's 3. But I think it's, over time, I think Tucker, if these route participations hold, I think Tucker will out target Thornton. And both of them have ADOTs 24, 25 yards down the field. I think that they are maybe slightly better versions or slightly more likely to hit than the Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think all 3 of them are kind of like, all right, it's a dart throw on a guy who could just hit for a long touchdown and pay off a low salary. But I would say I would rank them Tucker, then Thornton, then Lambert-Smith. A little bit of a gap before Lambert-Smith, but I think I'd want some exposure to all 3 of them. Tucker and Thornton. Actually, Tucker coming in now at 16% ownership to Thornton's 3. That might make me like Thornton better. If he comes in this much lower owned, I would actually prefer Thornton, I think. I'm not sure that it's going to be that big of a difference. Yeah, here RG just says it at 10 to 7% ownership. That seems more likely. I think people are kind of excited about Dante Thornton, just like an exciting rookie coming in who could surprise a little bit. I think Thornton actually might surprise and get more ownership than expected, but I think this looks closer to me to what I would expect between the 2 of them. And I think that does it for receivers. I'll check back in on chat, move on to tight ends. Who scores more fantasy points tonight, Nico or Bucky? If I had to guess, I'd go with Nico. Thornton destroyed the PSM model. Who is the play? You tell me. I think it's Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is the play. All right. Oh, and the weather was really bad in the Raiders game, so that's good. That's the reason that like leaning on one game sample just is pretty meaningless most of the time. I kind of hate doing trying to decipher which defenses are good early in the year because it's just impossible. Similar, I think it was last year, the first game of the year. I think it was Eagles Packers, and I did a showdown slate where my whole breakdown was like, I think this Eagles defense is going to be way better than they were the year before. I think they're going to really shut down the Packers. You're going to want to play a lot of the Eagles. and then did not realize at the time that it was a terrible weather game, and they were just slipping all over the place, and the Packers like crushed, and it was like, all right, that went horribly, but then they were great defense the rest of the year. All right. So we do need to pay attention to these things. We don't have any weather tonight, do we? Let me know if we have weather. I sometimes forget to check the weather here. All right, my page is frozen here, so give me a second. There we go. I think we're back. Yeah, we're back. Good. All right, moving on to tight ends. Okay, they're both dome games. Good, good. Yes. Might have some scoring tonight. Tight ends. Cade Otton, 3,500 projected for 28% ownership. Wouldn't be surprised to see Cade Otton getting a little bit more work here. He last year when he was doing really well, it was just when they were missing some of their starting receivers. Now we have Godwin out, but I think Egbuka might just be kind of filling right in. So I'm not sure that Otton is going to be any kind of focal point for this offense. Doesn't project extremely well. Again, projected to get some ownership. We don't have, outside of Bowers, we don't have especially strong tight end plays on this slate. If we look at the route participation, 73% last week for Cade Otton, just 2 targets. Wouldn't be that shocking if he got more this week. Let's take a look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed over the final 5 games of last year. It looks like it was a great matchup for Chargers tight ends. If this holds, again, year over year, defenses change sometimes quite a bit. But it was, as of last year, tough matchup for Cade Otton. This is a bottom 6 matchup for tight ends. Tough matchup for Brock Bowers. Tough matchup for Dalton Schultz. And then a pretty good matchup, actually, for the Chargers tight ends. Again, I'm not leaning. I'm not too worried about this. Just wanted to see if anything kind of stood out. None of those really stand out to me all that much. Year over year, again, things change quite a bit. But we have limited options at tight end. I think Cade Otton, 28% is a little bit higher than I would like to get to of Cade Otton. I don't think he's an extremely strong play here. I think I'm mostly going to be playing Brock Bowers. We'll get there. But he's out there running routes. If he scores a touchdown, can pay it off just fine. On the Texan side, we have a little bit of a change here because last week it was Dalton Schultz with Cade Stover. Now Cade Stover is hurt. Adam was speculating that he thinks that Harrison Bryant kind of just takes over that Cade Stover role, but we don't really know. We don't know how things are going to change with Cade Stover out here. So last week it was Dalton Schultz, 61.8% route participation, 4 targets. Cade Stover, 41.2% and 4 targets. So a lot of targets there for a tight end 2. If Harrison Bryant does step in and play that tight end 2 role, it's a pretty nice role. If you can get 4 targets in a game, like at low ownership, that would be a pretty strong play, projected for virtually 0 ownership. But I think Schultz probably benefits more. I think we see a bit more of Schultz than we did last week. Maybe he comes up to that 70-some% route participation. He is also projected for 32% ownership. I think it's a fair ownership number if he gets, maybe we give him 2 more of those targets from Cade Stover. I think the team actually likes Cade Stover, so I think that it was Cade Stover specifically, potentially, was cutting into the workload for Dalton Schultz because they actually like him. I'm not sure that Harrison Bryant will in the same way. We'll find out. We'll find out tonight. Yeah, that's Go Easy Card says, sorry for the McCarthy news, but huge congrats on the huge Mason upcoming weeks. Yeah, maybe. I'm hopeful for Mason. We'll see. Vikings really need their offensive lineman back. So I think Schultz is a strong play. I think 32% is, honestly, I think Schultz and Otton are similar plays. Like to me, they're both, I'll want about 25% of each. So I guess I would probably come in maybe even less than that because I think I want to be over the field on Bowers. I think ultimately I'm going to be over the field on Bowers and a little bit underweight on all these other tight ends. I think is ultimately what my stance is going to be when I make my lineups. On the Chargers, you've got Tyler Conklin and Will Dissly, assuming that Oronde Gadsden is out again. I'm not sure if he was already like they already announced that he's not going to play, but I think that's the assumption, is that we're not going to get Oronde Gadsden here. It's going to be Disley and Conklin once again. Maybe something to keep an eye on, but with that assumption, so it looks like last week, 51% route participation for Disley, 24% for Conklin, 1 target for Disley, 2 for Conklin. Not especially useful. It was, looking at schedule adjusted, a good matchup for tight ends last week. I'm not sure that either of these guys is going to be super involved. Why did I felt like they were more involved in this last week. It's kind of, these numbers sort of surprised me, because I was thinking last week they looked like maybe they had some plays called back or something. I think Disley looks like a fine play. Conklin at 0 ownership. Man, Disley getting less ownership than Conklin. That's interesting. I would obviously want Disley more than Conklin if he's going to come in at lower ownership based on the usage last week. Okay, RG has Disley as higher. That would be my expectation, that Disley comes in a little bit higher after getting more work last week. And then finally, you have Bowers and Mayer, who I think are both strong plays in their own right. I don't know that I would want to play them together too often. If you look at last week's usage, it doesn't tell the whole story, because Brock Bowers was already not running all of the routes. It was kind of a big storyline going around during the games last week, and then he got hurt, so he comes in at 59% route participation. He was just being targeted a ton when he was out there, and then I think it was in the third quarter when he hurt his knee and was out for the rest of the game. Already had over 100 yards, even on limited route participation. Brock Bowers he's a great fantasy play, regardless, as long as he's playing here. I think all the expectations are that Brock Bowers is going to play tonight. He was still listed as questionable on the injury report as of today. So all of the chatter was that Bowers is going to play today. But he was still on the injury report. Sometimes you get surprise inactives. He could certainly be a surprise inactive. I'm playing it as though Bowers is going to play tonight. If he ends up as a surprise inactive, I guess I'll end up with more Michael Mayer and more Nico Collins than I go into the slate with. But I'm going to go in with the expectation that I'm playing a lot of Brock Bowers. And in non-Bowers lineup, Adam said he would be fine with having a Raiders tight end in every single lineup. I don't hate that. I think that is a totally reasonable take. Like, if in lineups where you don't have Bowers, just play Michael Mayer. Just assume that Bowers is limited, or maybe he ends up out. We'll find out 90 minutes before that game starts. But I think Mayer, also a really talented tight end, had 4 targets last week on 41% route participation. If Bowers is limited, and certainly if he's out, obviously Mayer's route participation and target share should go up. So I think Bowers, to me, so my stance is, ultimately, I'm going to have a ton of Brock Bowers. I'm going to be way over the field on Brock Bowers if he does come in at current projected ownership, which is 40-ish% on both sites here. I think he's just a ridiculously good play at under 50% ownership. I think he could separate by 12 fantasy points, 20. I mean, he could separate by more, obviously, but wouldn't even be surprising if he scores 10 more fantasy points than the next best tight end on the slate. And he is a lot more expensive, but you can afford it with all the value on the slate. So Brock Bowers, to me, is just a fantastic play as long as he is active, and it's my expectation that he will be. And then Michael Mayer, I think, is a pretty strong under-owned play as well, just for some of that contingent upside and some standalone value. So at 10% owned, I would be overweight on Michael Mayer as well. But the headline is, yeah, give me all the Brock Bowers at current numbers. Looks like they're running another sim right now, so some of these numbers might change. All right. Moving on to defenses. I don't have a lot to say about defenses. I think the defenses are all, the ownership is going to be pretty spread out here. Does anybody have any good? Let me know in chat if you have a great take on the defenses, because I'm just going to let the sims do their thing. I guess my only note would be, if you're using an optimizer, make sure that you allow for defense against opposing players, and make sure you allow for, like, I usually set it at like 4 or 5. Like, I set it to be not restrictive at all. Just allow your defense to play against opposing players. You don't want to, some optimizers, the default is going to be don't allow defense versus opposing player, and I think that would be a mistake. All right. Yeah. So it's apparently some FUD on Brock Bowers in chat. Yeah, I mean, if the ownership is that low, I just think it's worth the risk. Like there's a possibility he's limited. I think that at under 50% ownership, it's just worth it to play Brock Bowers a lot. That's a good note from Swish Sanders. Raiders didn't call up any tight ends to the active roster. All right. I think that's it on tight ends. Yeah. So defense is just make sure you allow for defense versus opposing quarterback for defense against several players. Define a lot. You mean like, did I say I'm going to play a lot of Brock Bowers? For me, I would like to be 70 to 80% Brock Bowers. If you're asking me if that's what I said, yeah, a lot of Brock Bowers for me. 70 to 80% is where I'd like to be. So I guess that was a question, so we can put that. No worries. I didn't think you were being a prick. We can move on to the questions and lineups portion, and I'm going to start making my lineups here. Who's your favorite wide receiver tonight, Neil, and favorite rookie? I mean, Jacoby Myers is just the clear best point per dollar wide receiver on the slate. So I think he would be the first one there. And then favorite contrarian. I mean, if we get under 25% Quentin Johnston, I think Quentin Johnston would be my favorite receiver at ownership from a contrarian perspective. So it'd be Jacoby Myers number one, and then Quentin Johnston at the ownership numbers we're getting here, which we'll see. I'm not totally believing it, but I think Quentin Johnston would be there for me. But then I'm going to have a lot of Ladd. I'm going to have a lot of Keenan Allen. I'm going to have a lot of Nico Collins. I think we can just play the best plays for the most part. All right. I'm going to start making some lineups here with Run the Sims. Favorite stack would be Geno with Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. Easy game. Easy game. It's cheap. You can play not even really high ownership on Brock Bowers. Geno not getting crazy high ownership. Easy one. I'm going to be running the Sims on FanDuel immediately after I run the Sims on DraftKings. So I'll show you. I haven't really looked closely at FanDuel. I'm only playing 30 lineups on FanDuel, but I'm going to be running those Sims also. Okay, I'm going to get back to questions after I start making my lineups. So first things first, I always like to make my lineups before making any changes. I've got to give myself time here to do DraftKings main slate, FanDuel main slate, DraftKings Showdown for the first Showdown. Luckily, I've got another 50 minutes to do so. Looks like I'm playing 241 entries in the main slate. As you'll see, it's not actually a ton of dollar amount here for that number of entries, but 241. It's good to know. That's the number of lineups I need to make. And they appear to be in a good order in my spreadsheet. Good. All right. So now I'm going to go make 241 lineups in Run the Sims. So first thing I'm going to do is not going to change anything to the inputs yet. I'm just going to change settings, number of lineups, 10,000, size of contest field, 15,000. I'm playing the largest fields, number of simulations, 10,000. I'm going to change this to top heavy. This is going to take a little while I do this. I, for my Sims, do not like to change anything here. I'm just going to trust the play-by-play to correlate correctly for me. So I don't need to tell it to, quarterback stack. If that is what it should do, it will do that because the play-by-play Sims will do it for me. Not even going to force the quarterback stack. I think I'm just going to get to it anyway. But then again, I'm playing the Shady Portfolio Diversifier. I'm going to do 241. Just gonna check my DMs and make sure that this is I'm running this correctly, that I shouldn't do a fewer number. Make sure nobody's telling me, hey, you should do a smaller sim. Nope. Okay, we're good. Might take a minute. Let's let it go. All right. Favorite flannel color and design. I mean, you can't go wrong with red and black. And design, double-breasted, I think, or double pocketed. Does that mean the same thing? I have no issue with full fading Stroud in a 20 max. Think it's reasonable. Double breast. I don't know if this is a sexual reference or a food reference. Works either way, I guess. Only two teams. How much cash do you feel leaving on the table? I would say, I mean, we'll see what the Sims give me, but I would, if I were using an optimizer, I honestly would only force 400. So like it's 50,000 on DraftKings. I would set my cap at like 49,600 is often what I would do with an optimizer. Pete says Tampa's D-line scares me versus Houston O-line. Maybe that's good reason to play the Tampa defense, honestly. Maybe that's a good note for defenses. Here, I'll scroll down so you can see the steps. So we're at calculating payouts now. Okay. Nice feature of the Sims, telling you where they're at in the Sims. Agreed that the under feels very live. That's kind of my assumption. Wait, is that the wrong term? David says, Neil, you're low-key hilarious, double-breasted. Am I hilarious because that's not actually a term for a shirt? I think it is. Double, like I think that's a thing. Listen, I am a fashionable guy, but my fashion is buy the $20 flannels on Amazon, Target, whatever, and V-necks. I don't give a ton of thought to the different types. My favorite flannel of all time I got when I was in high school from my high school cross-country coach in a gift exchange from his daughter. Was just like it was I forget what the reason for it, but we all had to like bring weird gifts for each other, and my cross-country coach's daughter, who was a year ahead of me, was part of it, and I got a flannel somehow out of that. And it was my favorite. Fit me great. Any thoughts on a max from each team tonight, or just let it run? I just let it run. I think that's a way to get different. Jack, no, I did not. I do not own a Vikings jersey. I'm not a huge jersey guy. I don't think I own any Vikings shirt. I think I have a Vikings jacket. I've got a purple and yellow flannel. So that's what I wear for Viking stuff. All right, there we go. We are done with the first set of Sims. See, the top lineup here is Justin Herbert with Keenan Allen, just a single stack. Just goes to show you. So this is a good example of this lineup looks a little bit weird, right? It's Justin Herbert single stacked with Keenan Allen, and then you have Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, and Emeka Egbuka from the Bucs. So like doesn't make a ton of sense to me on its face, and it'll probably go under owned as a result. It's got Nick Chubb in there, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. So it actually has the stack that I like, except for not my top quarterback. Does have my second favorite quarterback. Second lineup is Justin Herbert double stack with Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen. Has an Ashton Genty bring back. Again, Evans and Egbuka and Cade Otton in that one. So we've got a triple Buck stack without the quarterback. Texans defense in there. That's interesting. We've got the triple Buck stack with the Texans defense going up against the Texans defense. Shows up as really positive EV. Now it is worth noting again, these are not coming in the order of the EV because I'm using the Shady Portfolio Optimizer tool, which is giving me the best EV portfolio of lineups instead of just giving me the top 240 whatever top EV lineups individually. So some of the lineups that I'm not getting might actually grade out better than some of the lineups that I am getting, but the portfolio tool is ensuring that I'm just getting to the best EV portfolio overall that's not cannibalizing itself too much. Finally, we get to a couple Geno Smith lineups. So these are the ones that maybe I'd be a little bit more likely to play in single entry, except I don't love Nick Chubb. Geno Smith with Jacoby Myers, Dante Thornton, and Brock Bowers. Love that. Love that stack right there. Bucky Irving, love that. Nick Chubb, honestly, I'm fine. I'm going to have some Nick Chubb. I'm happy to get to some Nick Chubb. We'll see how much I'm getting. Omari and Hampton, Texans defense. Love that. I think that's a great looking lineup. Fourth lineup, Geno Smith. Again, the same stack there with Nick Chubb once again, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, Omari and Hampton, Chargers defense. So how far do I have to scroll before I don't get Nick Chubb in my lineups? I think I'm getting to a lot of Nick Chubb because they have him projected for lower ownership at Run the Sims. You can see it only made under 10,000 lineups. So my next set of lineups, I can do fewer lineups in the sim. Player exposure. All right, I'm going to start a quarterback. I'm getting to 48.5% Justin Herbert, 24% Geno Smith, 24% Baker Mayfield, just 3% CJ Stroud. I might want to even that out a little bit more. At running back, getting to 56% Bucky Irving, 53% Ashton Genty, 84% Nick Chubb. All right, I'm going to change something because I do not like Nick Chubb as much as the Sims do. And I think it's because he's projected for just 24% ownership. I'm getting to 5% Najee Harris. Oh, actually, sorry, shady exposure is what I'm looking at. So I didn't get to any Najee Harris. I didn't get to any Rashad White or Daria Gumbawale. So I need to make some changes there to get to a lineup portfolio I like. Getting to 62% Jacoby Myers, I like that. 26% Nico Collins, 50% Lad McConkey, 66% Mike Evans, 59% Keenan Allen, 49% Emeka Egbuka, 32% Quentin Johnston, 21% Dante Thornton, 5% Higgins, 5% Tucker, 2% Sterling Shepard, no Hutchinson, no Knoll, no Lambert Smith. All right, so I'm going to make a few changes here and run it again. Tight end, I'm getting to a good amount of Brock Bowers. I might up that even more. I just think he's a smash play on this slate. All right, so now I'm going to go and mess with the inputs and run it again. And I'll enter after I do this one. So first thing I want to do is, I definitely want a little bit less Nick Chubb and a little bit more Daria Gumbawale. I also need to refresh to get rid of Dameon Pierce. Let me run a refresh real quick, and then I'll do it again. That might change things a little bit. All right, so yeah, they got Pierce out of there. I'm going to increase Nick Chubb's ownership because I think it's just going to be higher than they are projecting it for. Maybe not. I don't think people are that excited. Like, they might, this ownership might be a better indicator of market sentiment on Nick Chubb, but it's also an indicator on Neil sentiment on Nick Chubb. I'm going to give Daria Gumbawale a little bit more. So giving Nick Chubb 60% market share. I'm going to give Daria Gumbawale a little bit more of the. Actually, I'm going to increase the. So I'm getting to like 0 CJ Stroud. I'm going to very slightly increase some of these rates and lower the rush rate. Yeah, that's what I need to do. And I'm going to increase Ogunbowale's market share just a little bit in the passing game. All right. I think that's good enough for now. Maybe I'll increase Tampa sack rate slightly. I like the amount that I'm getting to of the Chargers. I like that I'm getting to a lot of QJ. Maybe I'll increase Chargers pace just a little bit because I like the game. I wasn't getting any Najee, and I do want a little bit more Najee. So I'm going to increase the pace a little bit. I like Hampton too. Maybe I'll give Najee slightly higher rushing market share here. Then on the Raiders, I was already getting to a ton of Myers. I'm going to give Bowers a little bit more of the workload here. I like the Raiders in general, so I'm actually going to move their points up and their pace up. Going to move. Wasn't getting to any Thornton. Or, sorry, wasn't getting to any Tucker, I think, because they have his ownership way higher. I'm going to move Tucker's ownership down to 10 and Thornton's up to 9. I think that's, yeah. And then I just want more Bowers. I'm going to move his receiving market share up, and then I'm going to normalize. All right, we're good. Oh, I got to normalize this. Now I'm going to run it again. So top heavy, number of lineups I'm going to do. Oh, I didn't mean to do the whole. Okay. All right. Run it again. Okay. All right, let's see. Getting a current player jersey is too risky. No, I believe in JJ. I'm just not really a jersey guy. I don't know. Yes, flannel company with sports logo, sports flannel. Beautiful. I'll buy that. Give me a Vikings flannel. I mean, I'm comfortable leaving a lot on the table. I think if you leave 3,000 on the table, that's totally fine, as long as it still projects pretty well. As long as you're like, you look at individual players and you think this player that I have in my lineup that's 3,500 has a reasonable chance of beating out all of the players up to 6,500, and you leave 3,000 on the table, that's totally fine. I would do higher than max. I would not do max 2 players against DST. I would up it to at least 3. How are we going to swap if Bowers ends up out? I think I'll end up with a lot more. I'll swap a lot of it to Nico Collins. Like I'll do a 2v2 swap. Since the 2 game set, I'll have a lot of players from the other game anyway. So it's not like I'll just like swap Bowers directly to Michael Mayer and leave it. It'll be a lot of swapping up other players to Nico Collins, to Lad McConkey. Nico Collins not in that game. What I'm talking about, to Lad McConkey. Some of the lower price guys maybe go to Keenan Allen, Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton. Like just a lot of tweaks there. Yeah, the games being at different times is pretty helpful. Yeah, Nico locked. Yeah, that was. I'm getting these games mixed up quite a bit. Who's playing who? When are they playing? But yeah, I got there. Pete Carroll seemed very confident. Yeah, he did. He was. He said he full participant. I think all indications are that he is playing. So I'm making that assumption also. All right, we're diversifying payouts. This is the shady portfolio part. So we're almost there. This is going to be a time crunch to get all of my sims in because I still need to do FanDuel and the Showdown slate. But I'm going to do my best. I actually don't have a ton on the Showdown slate, so I'm going to do FanDuel next, prioritize that one, make sure I get lineups in. All right. After making some changes, top lineup, Justin Herbert, Omarion Hampton, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, got bringbacks of Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Texans defense, and Nick Chubb. Still getting to a ton of Nick Chubb. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about it. Let me look at my player exposures. At running back, we're down to 69% Nick Chubb. That is theoretically nice, but I don't think I love it. I think I want more. I'm not getting to any Najee Harris. I want more Najee Harris. Yeah, I'm still just getting to 0.2% Dario Gumbawale. I think I want to change that a little bit. So I think I'm going to give Dario Gumbawale some more of the rushing share because I want to get more of him, less of Nick Chubb. All right. Do I do that before I enter any lineups? I guess I'm just going to take them out and then do it. So I'm just going to go back to my lineups. Just don't want to risk not getting lineups in. Again, I have plenty of time right now, but better to save yourself a little bit of stress, right? So I'll get some lineups in. Then I'm going to keep working on this one more time before I move on to the FanDuel lineups. All right, so way too much Nick Chubb, not enough of Dario Gumbawale. So I'm going to go straight to the inputs, and I'm going to change the market share from 8.5% Dario Gumbawale. I'm going to move that up to, I'll put it at 18%, and that's just going to cut down once I normalize. Brings him down to 16%, Chubb to 55%. Maybe that's enough to get a little bit less of Chubb and a little bit more of Gumbawale. Was I getting to, how much was I getting to of the Texans receivers? Let's go back to SimRunner Pro. Player exposures. 12% Schultz. 15% Jaden Higgins. Now I'm not getting to any Trey Tucker. Okay. So I maybe changed things too much there. Not getting into any Hutchinson. Jalen Noel. No Keandre Lambert-Smith. So I got to make some adjustments here. Who else do I want to move down? Nick Chubb is the biggest one. Okay. I'm also going to move the rush rate lower on the Texans to potentially get more of all the receivers. Yeah, I think that might be all I do. Rush rate lower, higher Ogunbowale. Market share. Was I getting to Sterling Shepard or Ryan Miller? A lot of Evans, a lot of Egbuka. Fair amount of Kate Otten. Not a ton of Sterling Shepard. So I think I can afford to give more and zero Rashad White. So I think what I'm going to do is move up the target share a little bit for the tertiary receivers and Rashad White. So I'm going to move smart adjust Rashad White up to 6% receiving market share. Maybe 7%. Sterling Shepard up to 14%. Ryan Miller up to 5%. I think that's it. And then I'm going to normalize and see what changes. So it should bring down Evans, Egbuka, and Kate Otten a little bit. So maybe just even out the team's exposures a little bit. Already brought up the Texans a little bit. Getting to a lot of guys I like on the Chargers. I think I'm pretty happy with it. I might want to move up Keandre Lambert-Smith just slightly, but I don't really want to do it at the expense of other receivers on the Chargers. I also like Najee. Was I getting to any Najee in that last run? No. So I do want to get more Najee also. All right. So I don't want to move the rush rate down. I think I'm just going to have to move up scoring and pace slightly. Maybe give Najee a slightly higher market share. Lambert-Smith a slightly higher market share. I don't really need Trey Harris, so I can just move off the Trey Harris or Darius Davis. I'm fine with just not getting them on this slate. Move Najee up in terms of receiving market share. Yeah. Let's try that. And then on the Raiders, I didn't get any Trey Tucker in that last run, so I might want to move him up slightly. Don't need Jack Besh, so I'll get rid of the Jack Besh. Move that to Trey Tucker. All right. And now I'm going to run it again. Make sure my settings are right. Yep. We're good. This is probably just going to have to be my last run because I need to get the other ones in. Brandon thinks I could just forego the Texans receivers. I mean, it's a reasonable thought. Seems unlikely. Oh, Brian says, in theory, I could be running the Showdown in a third tab. That's interesting. I mean, this one's moving quickly enough. But yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go Sim Runner. Actually, I'm going to go to up. All right, now I can go here. We'll see if this works. Go to the FanDuel main. Nope, that's not what I wanted to go to. Make sure it's still running over there. Yeah, still running. Good note. All right, I need to go to the FanDuel. Wait, is this? Oh, yeah, here. Okay. FanDuel Monday main. There we go. And now here I'm going to run settings. Maybe I don't need 10,000, 9,000, 15K, top heavy, all the same things. Only playing 30 lineups. Bada boom, bada bang. All right. I'm not that worried about Nico Collins' floor long term. I think that was just a fluke last week. Well, we'll see. It could be that their offensive line is such a mess that maybe he does have a lower floor, but Whalen says you might also want to combine the position breakdown with your sim adjustments to save time in the future. Yeah, I mean that's certainly something I could do. Could do the sim first and then see what am I getting and then adjust accordingly. But we're getting there. So this is the DraftKings. Diversifying payouts. Let's get there. There we go. All right. Still Nick Chubb in all the top lineups. I just cannot get rid of the Nick Chubb exposures. Looks like Justin Herbert stacked up with Keenan Allen, Lad McConkey, and Omarion Hampton, Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers. Bringbacks in this one. %42% Nick Chubb still. I'm up to 2.8% Dare Ogunbowale, 2.6% Najee Harris. So we're getting closer. We're getting there. Up to 0.7% Rachaad White. I am going to make one final adjustment here. Somebody asked, yeah, I'm getting to 50% Nico Collins currently. 82% Keenan Allen. Okay. That's interesting. And then quarterback, I'm getting to, I do want more Geno. So I think I'm going to go back and actually make that change also. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to move away from some of the Nick Chubb. So I'm going to move him from, I'm going to move up Dare Ogunbowale again in his rushing market share. Gets away from some of the Nick Chubb. Maybe I'll move up Woody Marks also. Should help just a tiny bit, at least with the Nick Chubb. I think I just want more Geno, so I'm going to increase Raiders 24 points, pace of 63, rush rate lower slightly. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. How much is I getting to Tucker and Thornton now? %9 Thornton, 5% Tucker. So getting closer, and the changes I just made should, I think, probably get to a little bit more for me. So now I will run it. Check in on FanDuel while this is running. FanDuel is done with my 30 lineups. Getting to a ton of Ashton Genty. So if anybody was curious about FanDuel, I'm just getting to all the studs. I'm getting a 98% Nick Chubb again. I want to maybe get a little bit less there. 45% Omarion Hampton, 53% Bucky Irving, 77% Ashton Genty. I know there's an argument to be made that you just shouldn't be changing these things. I'm nervous about Nick Chubb in that matchup. I think the usage is going to come up enough that it could just totally offset it, but I am going to make some changes here. Want to get to a little bit more QJ, I think. Not enough Brock Bowers for me. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go back. Here I'm getting to a ton of Baker Mayfield on FanDuel. So the top lineup that I got to on FanDuel is a Baker Mayfield stacked up with Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, and Cade Otton. That one has Nick Chubb as the only bringback, and then it has Keenan Allen, Lad McConkey, Ashton Genty with the Raiders defense. So it's pretty well correlated there. All right, I want less of Nick Chubb. So once again, I'm going to, first I think I want a little bit more Sterling Shepard, maybe a little bit less of the top Bucs receiver. So I'm going to change market share to 14% for Sterling Shepard. Texan side, I'm going to increase Dare Ogunbowale to, first I have to click Smart Adjust, 14% of the market share, 4% of the receiving market share. Normalize Maybe even more for Dare. Oh, I think I did that in Woody Marks. I think I did that wrong. But I'm fine with getting some Woody Marks. All right, that looks good. And then I just want more of this game in general, I think. So Herbert's 8,000, Geno 7,300. I want more Brock Bowers. Just going to increase. Just trying to get to the game that I'm more excited about. Thornton and Tucker coming into the same ownership here. Okay. Back to DraftKings. Got our lineups. Still Nick Chubb in the first three, but the fourth lineup now does not have Nick Chubb. I may have finally gotten away from some of it. That lineup has Geno Smith with Dante Thornton, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, bring back along with Amari Hampton, and then it has Bucky Irving, Nico Collins, one-offs, Tampa defense, just a beauty. That looks like the lineup that I was trying to get to here. All right, now I'm going to go player exposures. I have at quarterback, I'm up to 27% Geno Smith. I'm still at 60% Justin Herbert. So apparently he just projects so well that you're getting to a lot of Justin Herbert, less of the first game here. It's a little bit scary to have these kind of differences here, but might just have to accept that. Receivers, I'm at 70% Jacoby Myers, still at 79% Keenan Allen. Maybe I should have given QJ more of his market share. Is what it is. I didn't get to any Xavier Hutchinson. I would probably change that if I ran another sim. Don't think I'm going to have time. Got down to 33% Nick Chubb, 3.6% Najee, 4.7% to Dare Gumbawale, 0.9% Rashad White. So I would like to get to more of these other secondary running backs. I am just going to download this for now. If I have time, I'll come back and change things, but I think I have to just accept that this is likely going to be my final run of the DraftKings main slate. Because I still need to do Showdown. I've got the FanDuel slate running. All right. You can see that I'm still learning how to do sims in real time. But I think it's going well. Again, had a profitable Sunday, so happy with the way things are going with the sims. But I'm still, it's not as efficient as I was with other products, but getting probably a better portfolio of lineups. What is my tight end exposure? Brandon asks. I will look at that real quick before I move on to FanDuel. 72% Brock Bowers, 15% Dalton Schultz, 7% Kate Otten, only 2% Michael Mayer. I would want more there. 9.9% Will Dissly, 1% Tyler Conklin. FanDuel lineup still running, but we're at calculating payouts, so we're getting close there. Appreciate the reminder from Dan. Yeah, please do like the video if you haven't already done so. Very helpful to me. As Sean says, he hits the like on the way, and appreciate that. Brandon says, having a hard time getting more Bowers in when hand building. That might be why it doesn't give you so much naturally. Yeah, DQ says you might end up with a double tight end build. Huh, that's interesting. That there's I think looking at it that the pricing is so soft that it would be easier to get there, but I did not really try hand building. Zeus says, I always want to change the inputs, but then I don't because there's no way I know more than Adam and Brick. Well, Brick's not doing the inputs. So you just have to know more than Adam. And come on, you know more than Adam. Let's be honest. But that's a reasonable thought. If you just want to trust their inputs, I think that you can just trust their inputs. You're gonna have a good portfolio of lineups without making any of the changes that I just made. I like to IKB it. I like to have sort of different lineups than other people using the same tools that I'm using. But I think, yeah, you can certainly just use what it gives you. All right, we're calculating payouts for the FanDuel slate. I guess while it's doing that, I can download my spreadsheet. Have it already. CSV edit. Adam says he's jamming Baker Mayfield now. So yeah, more evidence. You know more than Adam. Come on. Yeah, Dan says this is going to be the slate. Neil bots have been absent. That's because I put a 20 minutes. If you have to be subscribed for 20 minutes before you can comment on the video. Now, I remember to do it on this one, which works certainly better than 5 minutes. Theoretically, they could still come in right away and be ready, but helps a little bit. All right, calculating payouts. I guess I could be doing my DraftKings Showdown while this is running. Also, don't know how many I did there. Just 30 per game. Tampa, Houston. All right, and again, I'm just going to run it to start. Taking a brief look at it, what would I like? I mean, here I think like Sean Tucker is more viable. 23% Sterling Shepard looks pretty good. Actually, I think I'd like to get to some Ryan Miller at 200. I think he could benefit from Tez Johnson being out. Dare, I think, looks great on the Showdown slate. So maybe just in the interest of time, I'm actually going to make these changes right away. So I'm going to change Dare up to 16% rushing market share and 7% receiving market share to hopefully get some there. I think Jalen Noel is viable. Harrison Bryant's going to look good here, I think. At 200. I mean, maybe I didn't need to make that change. Maybe I'm just going to get a ton anyway. Not sure. And Higgins is expensive. Hutchinson is going to look good, I think, at this low ownership and that price tag. I guess not that low of ownership. All right, so I'm only making 30 lineups here. Need to normalize. Then settings. $30. Reminder that if you want to try out Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off any of their products. This is the Sim Runner Pro product that I'm using. All right, so here is my FanDuel exposure now. Didn't get Nick Chubb in my top lineup now. Top lineup now, Geno Smith with Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Ashton Jeanty, Keenan Allen, bring back Omari and Hampton, bring back. We've got Bucky and Mike Evans going up against the Texans defense. Overall player exposures. I'm down to 67% Nick Chubb. So still getting to a ton. Not getting to any Dare still, which I don't love. I think right now, so I'm going to download these lineups. Just make sure I have lineups in for everything, so I'm not just losing all my money before I try to get risky with it. And I think I'm generally happy with the way those look. All right, got some lineups in on FanDuel. Got the Showdown Sims running for DraftKings slate. I think I'm just going to accept those lineups on FanDuel and prioritize other. I think I want to get back to the DraftKings slate. Did I download these? I don't think I did. All right, got the Showdown slate open. All right. So FanDuel, I think I'm just going to accept those lineups, leave those as is. Okay, now we've got Showdown lineups. I'm just playing 30 lineups here. Top lineup: Egbuka, Baker Mayfield, Dare Ogunbowale, Kami Fairbairn, Mike Evans, and Nick Chubb. That's interesting. Got both Chubb and Ogunbowale in that one. Kind of fun. Second lineup: Nick Chubb in the captain spot with, again, Dare Ogunbowale. I increased Ogunbowale's numbers a little bit there, rates a little bit. Player exposure, ultimately 52% Baker Mayfield, with none of it coming at captain. We got 50% CJ Stroud plus 6% at captain, 50% Bucky, 17% at captain, Evans, Nico, a lot of Fairbairn. Oh man, we got a ton of Kami Fairbairn. All right, but we're accepting these numbers. 53% Dare Ogunbowale. Okay, good. I'm going to download 30 lineups here. Probably not going to have time to do another run of the DraftKings main slate, but you can bet your ass I'm going to try. Okay. Close that. Close that. Okay. We're going to try one more time. Probably not going to happen in time, but again, I would like to get to a little bit more of some of the other running backs other than Nick Chubb. So I'd like to get to a little bit more of specifically Dare Ogunbowale, Najee Harris, Rachaad White. So I'm going to go back, change Dare Ogunbowale's rates up even a little bit more. Move Najee Harris rates up slightly. I'm going to move his market share up to 22% of the rushing market share. Also, wouldn't mind getting a little bit more QJ and a little bit less Keenan Allen. So I'm going to move Keenan Allen down to 23%, QJ up to 18%, and Lambert Smith up to 5% before I hit normalize there. And I don't care that much about getting more Rachaad White, but I'll give him just a little bit more of the market share here. All right, and then I think I can run it. Settings are still set up. Yep. So there's a small chance this will work, right? I did that pretty quickly. Agumbawale, Chubb, or Fairbairn Schultz for the. I'd say the running backs. I kind of like Agumbawale, Chubb. I'm sorry, David. The good thing is I got all my lineups in. I've got lineups in all of these. They're all sim approved lineups, so I know that they're going to be. Or I don't know because I've made a lot of adjustments to them, but I trust that it's going to be a good portfolio of lineups already. Just trying to perfect it to be exactly what I want, which isn't necessarily what it should be. Maybe I should have just left it exactly how they were as I started. But I want to get to the players that I like, the players that I believe in. Also, I suppose a change that I could have done is maybe not quite as high on the second game at the expense of the first game. Like, I don't feel that strongly that it's a better game. I like the game environment better, but I didn't mean to get to like 90% of the quarterbacks from the second game and 10% from the first game. I would have liked it to be like, 65-35. So that's also another change I probably should have made here. But I like the pass catchers from that game, so I don't know. It's tough. Keenan Allen is just so underpriced. That is true, David. Hopefully I didn't get rid of too much of my Keenan Allen exposure. But since QJ is coming in so low owned, just find him to be a strong play on this slate. Jaden Higgins touchdown. That would be great for my best ball bags. So I would accept that. All right, we're diversifying payouts. We're golden. Plenty of time left here. I have not done the second showdown slate. I will do that one. I don't think many of you are going to hang out with me while I do my second showdown, but I'll do a run of. Again, I'm just making 30 lineups for that one. I just wanted to prioritize the lineups that I have to do before lock. Don't feel any obligation if you want to go watch some football. Just before you leave, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't done so. And use promo code Neil if you sign up at Run the Sims. Appreciate you, Brett Bertoni. Shady advice over there doing calculations for me. Gotta appreciate Shady. Running the numbers in real time. All right. What do the exposures look like now? That's a joke, by the way. He's not doing it in real time. Did not get to more, didn't get to more of the players I wanted here. So that one I needed to adjust things more. Yep. Didn't get to any more of the first game either. Did I get to more of QJ? I realize I have to get these in. Ooh, I did get to a lot more of QJ. Not really at the expense of Keenan Allen. I got to less of Egbuka. I think I like it. I think I'm gonna accept these changes and download these lineups. I think I just took on more risk with these lineups though. Yeah. All right. Interesting. Putting them in. There we go. That is a risky set of lineups that I just made. So ultimately, I hope the first game doesn't score any points because I've got a lot invested in the second game. As far as quarterbacks go, I've got, Geno Smith came down there. I don't love all the things that changed here, but I got to 66% Geno Smith, 66% Justin Herbert, only 22% Geno Smith, only 8% CJ Stroud, and 4% Baker Mayfield. At running back, we have 75% Ashton Genty, 62% Bucky Irving, only 30% Omarion Hampton, 34% Nick Chubb, 3% Najee, 3% Ogunbowale, 2% Rashad White. Would have liked to get to more Najee Harris here. Hopefully you guys did. 43% Nico Collins, 63% Jacoby, 62% McConkey, 32% Mike Evans, 69% Keenan Allen, 22% Egbuka, 58% Quentin Johnston, 11% Thornton, 14% Higgins, 8% Trey Tucker, 3% Sterling Shepard. Didn't get to any Xavier Hutchinson. Maybe could have changed that. All right. So pretty risky set of lineups that I've got entered there. Now, the one last thing I'm going to do is the other showdown slate. So I'm going to go, actually, I'm going to do a new tab here so I can still come back to it. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. All right, we're going to do the other showdown slate, which is Chargers Vegas. We're going to go settings, top heavy. Only 30 lineups here, so it should be quick. Well, I guess that's just for the portfolio tool. Sean, inactives haven't come out for that game yet, but yeah, the expectation is that Bowers is playing. We won't find out until inactives come out again an hour and a half before, so it'll be, I think, an hour and a half from now. I think that game starts at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. So we will find out in an hour and a half if Bowers is playing. But that is the expectation. Nice. Surpassed 100 likes. Appreciate you guys. If there are any points scored in the first game before I'm done with this video, it just means that I lost all of my money. I retire. I've got some players from it. It'd be fine. Hopefully a rushing touchdown. Mayfield 14% owned in the contest here. I mean, that's all right. Came in pretty low owned. I'm probably going to regret not playing him. Come on, Texans defense. Calculating payouts. You can download these lineups now. Lineups here. Top lineup, Justin Herbert with Keenan Allen and Omarion Hampton, Dante Thornton, Geno Smith, Jacoby Myers. This one leaves 400 on the table. Second lineup, man, Chargers defense captain. That's interesting. With full-on Chargers onslaught, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, Cameron Dicker, and then Ashton Genty, the only bring back. Third lineup is Ashton Genty in the captain spot with Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston. Raiders defense, Cameron Dicker. Pretty diverse set of lineups here at the top. Overall exposures of the shady lineups. So I have 100% exposure to Justin Herbert overall. Only 14% in the flex to Jacoby Myers. So you can see he's a different play on Showdown versus the main slate. Geno Smith, only 18%. Keenan Allen, 60%. Ashton Genty, 59%. Plus, I mean, getting to more of them in the captain also. 42% Cameron Dicker. Only got to a little bit of Brock Bowers in this one. Some QJ, a lot of Daniel Carlson. So I might make some changes here. So if I go to, so again, a ton of Justin Herbert, might move down the pass rate there a little bit. So I get like a little bit more of the Raiders passing game, and honestly more of the Chargers running game. A lot of kickers, some Disley, not enough Bowers for my taste. All right, I'm going to go move up the rush rate for the Chargers all the way to 46%. Going to move Herbert's rushing market share down to 10%. Also going to move his, let's see if I move this up to, well, I'm going to move his touchdown market share down to 24%. All right. Want some more Najee, so I'm going to move his rushing market share up to 23%. I want some more Bowers. Move him up. Okay. We'll see if that does it. Jaden Higgins, 5% owned. That feels pretty good. All I've got is water right here with me, Dan. Only a little bit left. But yeah, you guys should be enjoying. Hopefully you're enjoying something on a Monday night. Good luck to you also, Pete. Thanks for hanging out. So many slates. These two gamers. I didn't even play the FanDuel showdowns at all. Just didn't have time. Apparently we have more of these 2-game slates coming up in like week 4. I think saw somebody in Discord. I think BP Kelowna was saying there's one in week 4, maybe another in week 5. Just a ton of these 2-game slates coming up, which it's more work. More work to work through 2 games than one. Pete, you love a 2-game slate. I think I would agree with you if it wasn't more work for me. I still, it's fine. It gives you more contest to play. It's still fun, but it is definitely a lot more work. Busy day for me. I didn't really have any breaks today. But once I'm done with this video, I'm done until tomorrow. I'm going to be doing my Dog Bowl show with Mathology. That'll be fun. That's the only like real work I have to do tomorrow. Maybe I'll do some prep work for other stuff for week 3, but generally get a little break now. All right, diversifying payouts. Are you kidding me? Chubb 27-yard reception. Is that going to be his longest reception of the year? All right, so now we have got to less Herbert now because I moved down the pass rate. Now more Geno Smith. I think these are closer to the numbers I like. I maybe moved down the Chargers passing game too much. How much QJ did I get? Okay, 9% and 7%. That looks good. A lot more Bowers now. All right, good. Happier with these lineups. I'm going to accept them. I'm going to download 30 lineups and get out of here. I mean, I guess I still ended up with a fair amount of Nick Chubb. Where did his ownership come in at? But I'll be kicking myself for lowering him as much as I did if he goes off. All right, we have lineups for all the slates now. 37% Chubb. Okay. Nico Collins TD. Wait, but who might be out? See, now I'm going to get out of here, but you guys are telling me stuff, so now I want to wait and hear what you're saying. Did somebody get hurt? Oh, but I don't have CJ Stroud. So it's, under review. Oh, it might be out of bounds. I get you. I got you. All right. Well, called touchdown on the field, getting a review. What's up, Blue Dog? I hope it's out of bounds, I think. Yeah. I'm hoping it's out of bounds because I don't want it to be a CJ Stroud touchdown. How about just a field goal? I'd take a field goal here. Chris says it's a good touchdown. It's on ABC. Yeah, I watch it on Hulu. Got the Hulu has live sports. All right. Marks is definitely out of bounds, so people are really, really unsure. I can't play. Jack says I need a flat screen in the Flannelverse. I can't play it anyway, though. Like, you can't play NFL. And as I learned this offseason, if you show anything NFL, like show a play, they are flagging that shit immediately. So I can't do watch-alongs. Like, I guess some people do shows while the games are on, but you can't show the game. So all I can really do is look at ESPN or watch on Hulu myself. It's showing up as 6 points, which is, oh yeah, it still says touchdown upheld. All right. Congrats to Nico Collins and anybody who played him. All right, we got it confirmed. That's fine. That's fine. As long as we don't get like a billion touchdowns from CJ Stroud. Playback I don't think they do NFL yet. They do NBA, they do MLB. I don't believe they have NFL. I know they were working on it. I talked to the playback people at one point, but they don't have NFL yet. All right, that is going to do it. Remember, if you do win tonight, make sure you follow these things and get yourself a Flannelverse hat. Would love to be spreading these out to people who are winning money. All right, thanks guys. This has been a lot of fun. Let's go win some money. Good luck tonight. I'll see you guys later.